Thursdays, only on Bloomberg Quint.
Thanks for joining us on Parlance. This is Bloomberg Quint. I'm Harsha Subramanian.
Good afternoon. I'm Meera Dugal. Let's get you the headlines. Nifty and Sensex recover early losses to trade marginally higher. Oil marketing companies lead gains as crude prices cool off.
Retail inflation falls to a 13-month low in October as falling food prices keep headline CPI in check.
News coming through that the Reserve Bank of India Governor Urjit Patel met Prime Minister Narendra Modi on Friday, most likely to find a middle ground ahead of the Central Board's meeting on the 19th of November.
INFS invites buyers for two of its subsidiaries, kicking off the asset sale process to revive the debt-laden group.
And Dassault CEO says there was no compulsion on choosing Reliance Defence, adds that the total bill has nearly doubled because India will get not 18 but 39 Rafale aircraft.
First, the markets. Early losses have been erased and oil marketing companies, it seems, are looking good today. Neeraj is here with a closer look at what's going on.
Yeah, actually, even Hang Seng recovered a little bit of lost ground in the session today. But I must say, I mean, a bit of a contrast that Indian markets are playing with the world markets the last 2 days. Yesterday, everything was hunky-dory and we were down about 1%. In today's session, the rest of the Asian pack started off very well and was most part of the trading day was actually didn't do well. Most part of the trading day was down in the red. But our markets have been reasonably resilient, about 0.25%. Are held predominantly by the oil and gas space. So if you look at the BSE oil and gas index, they give you a clue about 1.5% higher. Again, predominantly held by the oil marketing companies. So BP, HP, IOC, all three of them doing very well. And it must be a positional trader's nightmare to trade these companies because on Friday they were up about 5%. Yesterday they were down 7%. Today they're up about 3 or 4%. So a positional trader's nightmare, but on a daily given day, journalists delight, to be honest, what's happening to the OMCs. Sun Pharma, ahead of the numbers, has taken a bit of a beating, so that one is down. And Tata Motors, 2 days on a trot now, the numbers not looking all that best. And Tata Motors correcting duly, 3% down today after a 4% cut in trade yesterday. From amongst companies that reported numbers, Bank of India, Wokhard, Nalco, all three of them are amongst the top losers on the Nifty 500. So sharp cuts and on fairly high volumes for each of these names. What's doing well is our stocks like Colgate, Palmolive, Godrej and few of these FMCG names. But by and large, frankly, autos haven't had the tremors that they've had the last few days. The likes of Eicher are doing okay. So that is one standout point. And all marketing companies, as the headline stated, are the ones which are the standout performers on the gaining side on the index.
All right, Neeraj, thanks so much for that. That's the equity markets. A brief mention of news related to the ongoing spat between the government and the Reserve Bank of India. It has now emerged that Reserve Bank of India Governor Urjit Patel met with the Prime Minister Narendra Modi on Friday. Obviously, these were closed-door discussions and nobody knows exactly what was discussed, but it does certainly seem like the channels of communication between the Reserve Bank of India and the central government, which seem to have broken down, have reopened. Whether middle ground has been found on some of the contentious issues, including the central bank's balance sheet, support to the SME sector, the NBFC sector, and the prompt corrective action framework for the banks is not yet known. All of that will come up for discussion at the next board meeting on the 19th of November.
Consumer price inflation for month of October was the lowest in over a year as falling food prices kept the headline numbers well within RBI's target range. What's keeping food prices so low, and does it indicate weak demand conditions? Let's put those questions to Indranil Sengupta, Chief India Economist at Bank of America Merrill Lynch. Indranil, thank you so much for joining us. Firstly, what have you made of this weakness in consumer price inflation and the weakness in food price inflation? What are the factors that are lending to it?
We have always argued that inflation is peaking off because, growth is weak, below potential. So we are effectively seeing that play out as the base effects of last year go away. So that's number one. Food prices are lower than we expected, partly maybe because of a better monsoon. And this is something that we'll keep a watch, but food prices are certainly lower than we expect.
Indranil, good afternoon. Ira joining in just to stretch that conversation a bit further. So, if it was weakness in demand conditions, should it not be showing overall on the index? This time around, core inflation was higher. It does seem like there's something playing out, particularly in the food economy and maybe in the rural economy, because rural inflation this time fell quite sharply compared to last month's numbers.
Well, if you look at core inflation, a lot of it is driven by base effects. It's the same base effects which took the headline up and is bringing it down. You will see that play out similarly for core inflation. In the next coming months, you will see core inflation coming down. So that's point one. Number two, to some extent, maybe, as we've had a fairly sharp depreciation, that could have some ripple effects on core inflation. We have to watch that for the coming few months. So I think that, it's basically those two factors at play rather than any sharp differences between the rural economy and the urban economy at this point in time.
Indranil, so how do you think the RBI is looking at this? Will it force the RBI to shift to a neutral stance? And if inflation continues to undershoot its target, then what happens to their calibrated tightening approach?
Well, we had a cut call, in fact, for August, if anyone remembers. But clearly with inflation where it is, the RBI at least has to be on long hold. Because the real rate, exposed is obviously very high now. And the next month, inflation is going to fall below 3%.
That is true, Indranil. I think, if I'm not wrong, in the last time's MPC, I think Ravindra Dholakia spoke about the real rate. It is becoming quite relevant right now, particularly since, we were talking about the pickup of the investment cycle, but with real rates, I think in excess of 2.5%, if you go by the latest round of numbers, that would impinge on investment as well?
No, we think that, interest rates clearly need to come down for recovery. That has been our stance all the time. So we do think that at the least, I think if the RBI now starts to step up open market operations and pushes down bond yields, that will also help to bring down, lending rates.
What about industrial production as well? We've seen that industrial production has further weakened in September. Capital goods production in particular has seen a sharp fall. What have we made of these numbers?
No, again, just as there was a base effect in inflation numbers. There's also a base effect in growth numbers and in credit numbers. So as we go from here till March, you will see growth numbers weaken on a year-on-year basis because obviously the base is going to turn around. So just as inflation went up and has come down, you will see growth also, coming down. You will see loan growth also, maybe softening to some extent from current levels.
All right, Indranil, just last word then, how this stacks up also in terms of what it means for rates in the market. Liquidity has sort of remained tight. Are you comfortable with the extent of liquidity support from the RBI, or do you think more would need to be done? Because then that could really bring down rates. If inflation is in check, rate expectations on the repo rate side change, and there's enough liquidity, then you could move back towards perhaps 7.5 on the 10-year.
Yeah, so we are expecting the RBI to step up OMO to 50,000 crore a month between December to March. As you can see, the money market is short by almost 80,000 crore, and we will be entering the busy season. So we think that the RBI needs to put in about 2 lakh crore more of OMO between December to March. And that should help to bring down yields, even if, the RBI continues with its present monetary stance, which it just changed.
All right, Indranil, we'll leave it there. Thank you so much for joining us with your views. That's Indranil Sengupta from Bank of America Merrill Lynch. 1 month after taking charge, the new board of IL&FS has decided to seek bids for 2 of the group subsidiaries. The response will also help the 6-member board draw up a resolution plan for the entire group. That's according to a release put out last evening. Sajid is here to take us through the details of this and where the story is really headed. Sajid.
If you look at these 2 subsidiaries, which is IL&FS Security Services and the settlement and clearing operations of arm of IL&FS, these were the 2 subsidiaries which were sold to IndusInd Bank. In January, they entered into a memorandum of understanding, and in July they signed a definitive agreement to acquire these two arms. It seems that this deal has fallen through, and that's the reason why this has come back on the block, and now the board of IL&FS is putting it on a public auction so that they can gauge the kind of response that they can get from the sale of these two entities. It also means that the valuation which were being talked about for these two entities have substantially gone down, because at the time the deal was being done with IndusInd Bank, the valuation was pegged to somewhere around 350 to 450 crores. Now that valuation seems to have gone down, and that's one of the reasons why the deal fell through, because after the financial crisis at IL&FS, this entire all the subsidiaries lost value in terms of their. So this is if you look. To put in perspective, it is a profitable subsidiary till FY18. We don't know what the earnings for the first half, but as of FY18, it had a revenue of 324 crores and a profit of 45 crores. Now, when this entire process goes through the public auction, inviting expression of interest, it needs to be seen how much of valuation they can get it, and it also gives the indication to the board, which is headed by Uday Kotak, to see that whether there is enough appetite for the assets of IL&FS, because they are looking at asset monetization to recover money and pay off the debts. Asha.
All right, thanks so much for that. Let's move on. Jet Airways is still stuck in turbulence as the beleaguered carrier reported the third consecutive loss. A one-off gain, however, may have helped cushion that fall. Somit Sarkar is joining us with the fine print of the numbers there. Somit, what did they look like?
So if you see the headline numbers for Jet Airways, now the company's revenue was higher by nearly 9.5% compared to last year, but that was because of higher passenger growth and a one-off that we had seen in its revenue. Now if you see the EBITDA, which is one of the key profitability metric for an airline company, now there it reported a loss of close to 346 crore rupees, and on the bottom line front, the company reported a loss of close to 1,297 crore rupees. Now the revenue of the company, now that had a one-off of close to 111 crore rupees related to an expected refund from a lessor towards maintenance cost. However, the company has still not received this refund and is expecting that it will receive this refund in the second half of financial year 2019. Now it was a weak quarter due to weaker rupee, higher crude prices and lower ticket prices in the second quarter. Now rupee depreciated by nearly 9% compared to last year, because of which the company reported a foreign exchange loss of close to 417 crore rupees in the second quarter of financial year 2019. Now if you see the fuel cost, now that was higher because of higher crude prices, but the quantum of increase for Jet Airways, now that was higher than usual. Now if you see in second quarter, the ATF prices were higher by nearly 41%, but Jet's fuel cost per seat kilometer, now that was higher by nearly 44%. Now this is despite the fact that the company has more capacity deployed on the international routes, which enjoy a benefit of lower taxation. Now the costs other than fuel, now that was also higher by nearly 9% to close to 3.38 rupees per kilometer due to higher rental fees, finance cost, and because of foreign exchange losses. Now if you see the yields, which measure the average earnings per passenger per kilometer, now that declined by nearly 6% for Jet Airways to close to 4.18 rupees due to pressure in the ticket prices. And if you see the geographical breakup of Jet Airways revenue, you can clearly see where this pressure is coming in from Jet Airways. Now if you see in the domestic front, the passenger growth was 5% for Jet Airways, but its revenue growth was negative 1.2%. And in the international front, the passenger growth was 5%, but the revenue growth was nearly 18% for the company. So the most of the pressure is coming in on the domestic front. Lastly, on the balance sheet side, because of the losses in excess of 2,500 crore rupees reported by the company in the first half of financial year 2019, the company's total liabilities have increased by nearly 18% to close to 22,700 crore rupees.
Soumen, thank you for that. That's Jet Airways for you. Let's talk about Sun Pharma. Removal of regulatory hurdles at its Halol plant may have helped Sun Pharma revive its business in the United States. Rupee depreciation also may have helped. Darshan is here with what the analysts are expecting from the second quarter.
Yeah, so 14% top line and bottom line growth and an EBITDA growth of close to 22%, which will again mean EBITDA margins of close to 22% versus 21% that we saw last time around. Now, the Halol plant has been cleared. We'll watch out how the US business will pan out, because recovery and some of the key products will be launched and there will be more traction there. Apart from it, what you're looking at it is the fact that the rupee has depreciated significantly. So that is something that you need to watch out for. The subsidiary Taro has already reported numbers which came in better than what the street was anticipating. So that probably may have been factored into Sun Pharma's number at this point of time. It's important to know what they're doing as far as their specialty business is concerned. They didn't launch any products in this quarter, but over the past few quarters they have been launching products, and that is something that you need to watch out for. What do you need to watch out for? First of all, what are the US initiatives for Illumia? What are they doing as far as their US specialty portfolio is concerned? What kind of ramp up will happen as far as Halol is concerned, and generally their trend and analysis of what they see on the US markets and the domestic markets going ahead.
All right, thanks for that, Darshan. India will now get 36 instead of 18 Rafale fighter jets in flyaway conditions, says Dassault CEO, justifying the higher bill that India has to pay for the aircraft. Speaking to ANI's editor Smita Prakash, Trapper said that the French aircraft maker actually had to give a 9% discount for the bigger order. Listen in.
Number one was a contract with 126 aircraft, among them 18 to be produced in France, and then a progressive license with not only HL, but many companies around to be able to produce. So that is one part, with deliveries of jigs, and then labor. Then came the question at that time of how many hours to produce a Rafale by Indian companies compared to a Rafale produced in France and this and that. Then you have the cost of the labor on this. So this is one matter. Now 36, the price of the 36 was exactly the same compared with the 18 flyaway. You compare flyaway to flyaway. 36 is double than 18. So as far as I was concerned as Dassault, it should have been the double. Including the price. 36 aircraft to compare with 18. But because it was a G2G government, there were some negotiation, and then I had to decrease the price of 9%. So the price of Rafale in flyaway condition is less expensive in the 36 contract than it was in the 126.
And when you talk about 9%...
You cannot divide like this, that doesn't mean anything.
Okay. If you're talking about 9% cheaper than the flyaway, yes. 9% cheaper, is it the basic frame with non-weaponization, or with the weaponization it's 9% cheaper?
With no weapons. The weapons is a separate contract.
As a supplier, did you feel that HAL did not have the capacity to produce the leftover, not the flyaway condition, but...
No, not at all. We have a long experience with HL. I worked myself with HL, and I have great respect for this company. What was difficult in that deal to be negotiated was two matters. One was a responsibility, not only of the first aircraft, because it was a kind of license. So you got 18 aircraft flyaway, meaning is produced here in France, and then step by step, a license production through HAL, because HAL was the lead production agency. The question was at that time, and many discussions we had, is how many hours HAL should take compared to the number of hours Dassault is taking in France. It was an issue. And the second issue was the responsibility. Should I be, as Dassault, responsible for 126 or only of the beginning of the production? Because at the end, for example, if you take the last aircraft, the 126th aircraft, totally manufactured by HAL, HAL should take the full responsibility in front of Indian Air Force. These were two issues which were difficult to resolve.
You didn't want to take responsibility of the 126?
126, no, only for the 18, then for the 108, the parts which were supposed to be produced here in France, and the responsibility of transferring the know-how, of training of the workers, of supplying the tools, the publication, the documentation. But then at the end, when you have a manpower which is totally in the hands of HAL, and HAL, as you know, is a state-owned government company, this was the responsibility of HAL to produce and to deliver to Indian Air Force, not mine. This is what my feeling.
Former President Hollande said that Dassault was not given an option. They had to pick the offset partners which the Indian government told them to. Whereas the Indian government says that nothing of that sort happened. So
it's totally untrue, and the former President Hollande made and performed a correction of what he said. He said clearly the two partners found themselves together. So it's not at all a decision of the French government or the government of India that Dassault selected Reliance. I have a good example. If I started discussions with the Reliance Group in 2011, President was not Hollande in France, and Prime Minister was different from the existing Prime Minister of today at that time in 2011. And we settled an agreement in 2012.
But the Reliance of that time was also different. Yes. It was the other brother. So it was, I mean, the president was different. The only common factor is you. Because the Indian Prime Minister was different, the French President was different, Reliance was different. Right. You're the only one who was common.
This is why I say I decided.
Right.
So I said we decided to go ahead with the group Reliance. Within the group Reliance, there are brothers, but they still have their mother. They are together the sons of the former lead of the company, Ambani. And it's a big group, so it was totally in line with the family group to go ahead with Reliance, with one or the other company.
Let's move on now. By 2030, India's power sector will be responsible for more carbon emissions than the United States. That's according to the International Energy Agency's latest World Energy Outlook. India will topple the US from the second spot as electricity demand skyrockets. Anindya Upadhyay now joins us with more details on that report. Anindya.
Indeed, India's electricity demand is going to skyrocket so much that India is going to replace US as the second largest emitter of carbon dioxide from the power sector by 2030. And so the International Energy Agency has said this today in its World Energy Outlook. Now, a very important thing is that by 2040, actually, India's energy demand, electricity demand is going to triple, and which is going to increase carbon dioxide emissions by 80%. Now, a big chunk of our electricity demand is poised to come from India's cooling needs, from air conditioner needs. And so the IEA report says that by 2040, India's AC use in households will go by 15 times, and the cooling electricity demand will go up by 700%. And that's a lot, and that kind of gives us a glimpse of how much India's electricity needs will rise by 2040. However, it also notes that even by that time, even with India's electricity demand skyrocketing, the per capita use of electricity in India will be among the lowest in the world. Meanwhile, India and Southeast Asia will be the demand center for coal-fired power, and the demand for coal will double, almost more than double from these two regions, and that explains why India's carbon emissions are going to go up. And China remains the largest carbon dioxide emitter from power sector now, and over the years to come, India will replace the US on the second spot, which is not good. And in fact, US emissions will go down. Back to you.
Anindya, thank you so much for that.
All right, a final bit of news today. Our former president and chairman of Marvel Comics, Stan Lee, passed away in California yesterday. In a career spanning more than 7 decades, Stan Lee, along with his longtime collaborator Jack Kirby and Steve Ditko, gave birth to classic superheroes like Superman, the Hulk, Doctor Strange, the Fantastic Four, among many others. Friends, fans and colleagues have paid tribute to the comic icon on social media, although he never really had the full financial rewards that he should have perhaps for his work.
Give us away. It's not easy. obviously, the first thing they should be excited about is my cameo.
Out of time on the show. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Good news, guys. Got a promotion and a damn good raise.
Congrats, beta.
Congrats, मेरी तरफ से भी.
From mama too.
वाह, raise? अब तो इंश्योरेंस पॉलिसी ले ले.
इंश्योरेंस? कौन सी कंपनी से लूं?
सोचना क्या? चूज वही जिस पर